Long ago, long, long ago, hippos did not live in rivers and pools. They lived out in the bush with all the other herd animals. Now, back in those days, the hippo, he had a very fine coat of glossy chestnut brown hair, and his ears, they were silky and they were soft, and he had a beautiful bushy tail of which he was overly proud. And every day at noon, when he had his drink, he would spend hours gazing at his reflection in the water, turning this way and that way and admiring himself from every angle, quite like the story of Narcissus. And his vanity was so great that he demanded that all the other animals should praise his beauty. Now, one day when he was at the water's edge, admiring himself and looking at himself and just, ooh, I'm so sexy, I'm so good looking, he said, ooh, I'm so, so handsome. Not at all like that stupid hair with his coarse coat, his long ears, and his silly, twitchy nose. What a freaking short tail he has. And look at how clumsily he hops around. Well, unfortunately for Hippo, Hare just happened to be nearby, and he overheard what Hippo was saying. And that hare, that rabbit, he was furious. So he decided that Hippo needed to learn humility. And after thinking for a while, Hare collected a large pile of soft, dry grass under a huge shade tree, and he offered it to Hippo, saying, "Oh, magnificent Hippo, here is a warm bed that I have prepared for you, since winter is on its way and the nights are growing cold." The Hippo, well, he wasn't nice about it. He was a little condescending, in fact. But he accepted that gift, and he said to the hare, "Yes, yes, you're right. I must be looked after. After all, not everyone can be as handsome as I. And I'm glad to see that you realize your responsibilities." Now, Hare, that rabbit, he was nearly choked up with rage. What a vain creature Hippo was. "Just you wait, my fine friend," he thought to himself. And he helped Hippo settle down comfortably. Then the hare, the rabbit, ran to a nearby village, and while everybody in the village was busy drinking beer, he crept up to the cooking fire and stole some glowing embers, and he carried them off on a piece of broken clay pot. Now Hippo was snoring happily in his warm bed of dry grass when Hare got back. And that hare, he crept up and he threw in the burning embers on top of that dry grass, and he was blowing until he had a fine blaze going. And that Hippo, he woke up and he found his coat was on fire, that forest was on fire. And he heard Hare laughing nastily as he dashed out of the way, running like Hare always does, laughing at Hippo. And Hippo was confused and terrified, and at first he thrashed about trying to beat out the flames, but soon that fire reached his skin, and he ran and he ran and he was screaming in pain, and he opened his mouth so wide, wider than all the other animals. He was screaming so loud. He ran straight towards the waterhole, mouth wide open, screaming the whole way. And as he crashed through that bush, that bush, the fire spread to the dry winter grass, and soon the whole area was on fire. Well, Hippo reached that water just in time to save his life. The flames were put out and the cool water soothed his pain. The fire raged around the water's edge, and Hippo had to hold his breath and sink beneath the surface. Only his eyes and nostrils showed when he came up for air. Now that bushfire burned for a long time, but eventually it died out, and Hippo climbed out of that pool stiff and sore, but very much alive. He was resolved. He was going to find that freaking rabbit and give him the beating of his life for destroying his Hippo's beautiful, beautiful coat. But when he got out of the water, Hippo had that habit, checking himself out in the mirror, and he couldn't resist. He looked at himself in that pool of water, and he got a terrible shock. Reflected in the water was a pinky, gray, bald, wrinkled old creature. He couldn't believe his eyes. His bushy tail was gone. All his hair has been burned off, and ugly, round, pink eyes poked out where his long, silky ones used to be. Without the fine, glossy fur, his legs looked short and stubby, and his flanks bulged with fat. Now, Hippo was horrified. He was ashamed. He was broken-hearted, and most of all, embarrassed. He rushed straight back into the water to hide his body from curious eyes, and weeping with shame at his dreadful appearance, he sank below the surface so that only his nostrils and eyes showed. And there he's remained ever since. Now, you know this story is true, because even to this day, Hippo only has hair around his nose and his eyes, and the hippo, because the hippo remembers screaming and remembers what that rabbit did to him and how wide his mouth got opened. The hippo can open his mouth wider than almost any other animal. Big, big mouth. And now, Hippo doesn't like to come out of the water. He's a creature of the rivers and the lakes. Only at night, when no one can see him, does he come out to walk and graze at the edge of the forest. Although he's still vain at heart, this happened so long ago that hardly anyone remembers that Hippo once was hairy. Thank you very much.